Sherlock Holmes, Guinness Book of World Records says that he is the most portrayed movie character ever. There's been 70 actors who have portrayed him in over 200 films. Now that being said, this film found a unique and different take on the character that we really haven't seen before, and it turned into a spectacular and really interesting film. I'd love to hear from both of you what drew you to the project and why it was something that you wanted to be a part of.
Well, I think if nobody had made a film of Sherlock Holmes, I would have wanted to make this one. Of course, everyone's known about Sherlock Holmes all their lives. He's just he's just part of the culture. He's like Peter Pan, you know, or Father Christmas. He's always been there. It's an intriguing notion to think that someone so familiar should actually be so strange and undiscovered. So that's a cute idea and carried through, I think, brilliantly in the novel, which I can recommend, by McKellen. Which a nice compliment to us. What is the title of the novel?
Slight Trick of the Mind.
The Slight Trick of the Mind. The novel is being reissued and it's now called Mr. Holmes. It was the same with Gods and Monsters, Bill Condon's movie that I was in, which was adapted from a novel. It was adapted from a novel called The Father of Frankenstein, and after the film was a success, Christopher Brown changed the title of his book. Well, I don't know. I feel a little bit nervous, not nervous, but unnecessary to talk about the film because you've seen it and your mind must be buzzing with ideas. And if it's not obvious to you why I would want to be in it, I can't persuade you. It, of course, is an acting treat to play a character twice over. No. An old man and then a really old man. That's enormous fun. Not as much an acting challenge as you might think, I have to say, but that was part of the fun. And then once Bill Condon, I think we agree we'll go anywhere for Bill. And once he told me who else was going to be in it, not only Laura, which was a thrill because we'd never worked together before, but a lot of other friends, old friends of mine in the film. It was a dream job. I should stop talking.
Laura, how about for you?
Well, for me, it was a combination of, it was Bill, it was Ian, and Sherlock Holmes. You know, I've been a Sherlock Holmes fanatic since I was a child, so I was thrilled to be asked to be included in something that had anything to do with Sherlock Holmes. So it was really, and filming in England is really a treat. So it was the combination of those things, really.
Well, and you both mentioned the book that the film is based on. Was it something that you read in part of your preparation for filming, or did you just let the script speak for itself?
I think it's as well to let the script speak for itself, don't you? I mean, someone spends months, years, writing a screenplay. It doesn't need an actor to come along at the last minute and say, why didn't you put this bit in? Well, because they thought about it for months and decided that they wouldn't, you know, act. But it's a very helpful resource for the actors to have the book available, because there will be things in it which can underpin what you're going to do on the screen. It was the same with that very long book by who? Oh, Lord of the Rings, yes. I used to carry a copy of that in Gandalf's gown, and if the wind was blowing in a particular direction, I was striding up. The profile of the book is perfectly clear. I shouldn't have told you that, should I? Maybe send you back to see the movies again.
But I must mention that the book is quite different from our movie. They use it as a primary resource, but then they did change the narrative, they changed the plot. Our characters are slightly different, but it was a wonderful starting point for all of us. And it's a beautiful sort of poetic, beautiful novel with a different type of rhythm and a sort of depth of observation. It's a beautiful read, but it wasn't what we pinned everything to.
I'd be interested in asking people, because we assume, because of the fame of Sherlock Holmes, that that will be what initially catches your interest about a film with his name in the title. But is there anybody here who has never seen or read a Sherlock Holmes book or previous film? One person. Well, that's
Two.
Two, yeah. Well, that's pretty amazing. But as the film is based on the book, also the book is based on the Conan Doyle, and but it stands as itself, doesn't it? And I think this film ought to appeal to people who don't know who Sherlock Holmes is, because it's about a perennial dilemma of age and decrepitude and regret and all those things which occur to you on a daily basis when you get to 76. Well, anyway, I don't regret this movie one little bit. I'm very proud of it, and to have at last worked with Laura, and to be back with Bill again, and long may it continue. Someone said the other day, are you going to make a series of this film? Well, how old do you expect Sherlock to be able to go on acting? But who knows? Maybe there'll be a part 2, Mr. Holmes part 2 and 3 and 4. And we'll see off that Benedict, whatever he's called.
I don't think anyone would complain if they had to see a second one, but I'm going to open it up to the audience in just a moment, but one last question from me first. You know, obviously you two do a fantastic job in the film, but also Milo Parker, we need to, I think, gets a round of applause. He does a fantastic job as well. I'd like to hear what it was like working with him, because he really did bring a lot to this film.
Absolutely, and one enthusiastic journalist said they should bring back their child Oscar category, because he would clearly be a contender. Well, it was only his second film, and he had an enormous amount of very pleasant self-confidence, and he was glad to be with us, but he wasn't overwhelmed. He flirted with the makeup ladies in between takes, and did what he was asked, and one couldn't have a single complaint about him, and you know, children and animals. And I find balloons don't work with them on the whole, but I'd work with Milo Parker if he'd let me any time now. He is a star. He's starring in Tim Burton's latest movie, so I think we've pushed him out, and I wish him well.
He's a sweetheart. He's just a sweet, sparkling young man who's very, as Ian was saying, his disposition is very easy, and he was game and happy to be there and wide-eyed, but yet not afraid, and didn't try too hard, didn't try too little. He was just a pleasure to be around, and he has a wonderful family, and so we were very, very lucky to have found him.
Well, I know I'm not the only one with some questions this evening.
I was lucky enough to play a large part for him in a new theatre that had opened in the north of England, and in Coriolanus was the play. And you'll have to wait for my memoir, which I'm about to write, and there will be a long paragraph, if not a chapter, about Tyrone Guthrie. He was an amazing man. And if you're interested in such things, read his book, Surprise Us in the Morning. It was a note he used to give to actors, excuse me, at the end of a day's rehearsal, and so the actors didn't just go home and forget the play and come back the next day. He would say, surprise us in the morning. So, of course, you spent the whole evening and night wondering how you could do that, and in doing that you went on working. That was a sort of brilliance he had. He also treated every single actor differently, according to their experience and their needs as he saw them. So, great man, Tyrone Guthrie. And the Guthrie Theatre in Minneapolis is, of course, named after him. He worked there.
This lady, yes, right here, yeah. Yes.
I'm so nervous.
Breathe.
Among all the characters you've portrayed, which one do you identify the most with?
So of all the characters you've portrayed, which one do you identify the most with?
That question was for you. She wants to
But
know.
you can answer it while I'm thinking.
Which one do you most associate yourself with?
It's hard, isn't it?
Of your work for you?
Oh, no, of your work.
No, it's for you.
Oh, look, I'll answer it. I've played a lot of villains, so I'm not going to say Iago or Richard III or Macbeth or Magneto. I wouldn't want to be confused with any of that. Gandalf. Well, I like Gandhi. I mean, I don't like Gandalf the White as much as the Grey. Well, Gandalf the Grey is nice. There is another Gandalf, Gandalf the Gay, and I really like him. I think, if anything, I do identify myself a little bit with James Whale, the openly gay director, film director, the highest paid director in Hollywood at his time, and in the 1930s, openly gay in this town. A man to be admired and revered, and of course his work is so stylish and The Invisible Man, the first Frankenstein movies, Showboat, and many others. Oh look, I can't compare myself with him, but he's a bit of a hero of mine anyway.
Well, Laura, I think Ian had a good idea. Why don't we get your answer as well?
Probably Mary Ann Singleton from Guilty.
Yes.
Though you're nothing like her.
No, I'm nothing like her, but there's I think it's the part that sort of has meant the most to me over time because of the people who I met while I made it. It was my first very large part from beginning to end that I was able to be with. I learned a tremendous amount, and it was the first thing because I grew up in the theater. I was very intimidated by film and television. I really didn't think it would be for me, and it just scared me, quite frankly. And it was the first time where I went, oh, maybe I can do this. Maybe this is something I might not stink at, and I might actually enjoy it at the same time. So that's the one that has the most resonance for me, anyway.
It worked out. There was a very eager hand right here. Yes.
Mr. McKellen, what was your process in creating the character of Mr. Holmes?
What was my process in what?
In creating the character of Mr. Holmes.
Oh, this is going to be a disappointing answer. Are you an actor? Yes. Well, just remember we all have our different processes, and you're not to copy what I do. It suits me down to the ground, like that. Well, I look in the mirror. Well, you know, in a film, it's your face that counts, isn't it? That's what the audience is going to look at. That's where they're going to get most of their information from. And so it's with great eagerness that I waited the day when we put on the makeup for the first time, which before, obviously, we started shooting. And once they'd put on the false nose, which they wanted to do because of it ought to be aquiline, and once they'd shaved the front of my hair, which was, thank goodness, grown back, and they dyed it white, that's right, yes, and then they put on this plastic stuff which pulled it and dried into all those wrinkles. Only took 40 minutes. There I saw a 93-year-old man looking back at me, and I took great comfort in that I wasn't going to have to act with my face, that work had been done for me. And then, as it were DNA, the face being right, somehow it was possible for the voice to be right, and the gestures to be right, and the physique to be right, and the walking to be right. And well, there was Mr. Holmes. And it just, you start with one thing, get one thing right, I think is what I'm saying, and then you can use your imagination to push it through the rest of your body. That's one way of doing it, isn't it? Another way is to be really clever at the job, and imagination, that's the beginning and the end of it, really.
There was a lot of explicit references to your character and his mannerisms and the way that people saw him, but for Miss Monroe, there's a lot left unsaid about who she is.
I don't even know her first name.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about developing that character, because it's kind of the opposite. He's playing a character that's been played so many times, and you got to create one that we don't know much about.
Well, Bill was quite wisely sort of set me in the direction of really to think about what it was to be a war widow during that period of time, to be someone who had been probably displaced, whose life had been turned upside down, who was grieving, who was sort of found themselves now, it was necessary to be employed, and probably employed in something that she didn't want to do nor was particularly good at. The fear of losing her son, who was the only thing left of her family. So I sort of started from there, and then I had just had a baby, so fortunately there was a little more weight on me to begin with, and then they padded me up even a little more, and so the body was then right for that period of time, and we just sort of went from there, and then you just look at that face, and you're all good.
That's fair. That's fair. Another right here. Yes.
We'll get to you.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you give a moment in your past, for both of you actually, can you give a moment in your past that made you question your acting career and that moment of doubt and how you overcame it?
So a moment in doubt in your career that you overcame, and when that was and how you did that. Laura's gonna give it to you first, I think.
Have you got the answer?
Oh, I got, yeah. My third year at Juilliard, I was cast as Ellie in Heartbreak House, and I was god awful. I could not think, move. It was just, it was terrible, and it was agony. And because I grew up in the theater, it was the first time that I had ever been on stage in my entire life, and the place where I felt the safest was the place I did not want to be. I was uncomfortable. I had thoughts running through my mind, like get me off stage. I was incredibly uncomfortable. And I really thought, well, okay, I had a real crisis of faith. And I thought, well, this is all very well and good. I've gotten into this very fancy pants school, and everyone's been very nice to me, but I clearly don't belong here, and I can't do this, and this is awful. And so I went to the head of the school, and I wasn't being overly dramatic, but I said, I'm going to go join the Peace Corps. And I just think someone else would do better in my space, and you should open the space up to someone else. And one of the original acting teachers there, who was a man named John Sticks, called me and said, come here a minute. He said, I hear you want to drop out of school. I was like, yeah, I do. He goes, come with me. He took me into the bowels of the school I didn't even know existed, and it was his office. He goes, what is this shit? What am I doing? And I was like, John, I just can't. He says, this is where you're supposed to fail. He said, you have to fail. If you don't fail, you don't get better. He said, so congratulations, you're on your way.
What a wonderful story.
And it really was a turning point. I didn't understand it at the time. I just felt like everything was falling apart. And it was, but actually it was falling apart for the right reasons. And it was falling apart so that all of a sudden then it would clear my mind. And then within the year, like everything just turned, and I began to sort of understand my own relationship to my work in a very different way. So it was an excellent lesson. It was painful. It was incredibly painful, but it was. I'm glad that someone, told me it was okay to be really, really bad.
Because I never went to drama school and never learned a method of acting, I still have to sort of reinvent my method with every production I'm involved with. And because I try not to repeat myself, not to play parts that I've already played in other scripts, as it were. I like the challenge. There is a moment during the preparation period, particularly with plays, when I think I can't do it, and I shouldn't do it. And that's very good for me, because it makes me work harder. I'll tell you a story, which is a long one, but I'll cut it short. Many actors have stage fright. I couldn't do what we just did now, walk in front of strangers without coming out in sweat. Ooh. And then they got to play a part. How they do it, I don't know. I know actors who vomit in the wings into a bucket before they go on stage. I mean, why do they do that?
Derek Jacobi came to Juilliard and spoke to us and talked to us
So
about. Derek Jacobi came and spoke to us about his periods of stage fright when I was in drama school. I remember him telling us about it.
Well, I just had one example of stage fright, and I was in a very successful production with Judi Dench, who's now my second favourite actress. And we were in the West End, everyone loved us, and I was out having a late night meal one night in an empty restaurant, but in the corner were two old actors, and one of them had just been to see our show and was praising to his friend Judy's work and then the play in general, but they said, that young man played the leading part, my goodness, if this is the future of the British theatre, I'm going to get out in it. He's absolutely, his manner, his voice is up and down the scale, his gestures are all over the place. Oh, dreadful, dreadful, dreadful. So I listened to all this, but I'm in a hit show, so I think it's rather amusing. There's one person in the world who doesn't rate me, fair enough. Now, next night, I'm on stage with Judy. She's lolling in a chair there, and I'm standing, feeling rather vulnerable, because I'm in a one-piece bathing suit and a Panama hat. And I'm in the middle of speaking. And all I can think is that every single member of this full house agrees with that actor who I heard last night saying that I have no right to be here. And I didn't know where he was. I didn't know where I was. I looked over at Judy. She turned my back on the others. She said her own lines. She said my lines. She said other lines of them. And she dragged me through that scene. And that took me 3 months to get over. So, I've had stage fright, and for that moment, wished I wasn't an actor. But for the rest of my life, I've been very glad that I am.
We are too. We're running press for time, but so the question is, what do you look for in a character when you've been offered a role? What makes you decide to take it or not?
I look for the story more than the character. And I look to see if the script is actable. Because a lot of time I find scripts now they're not written to be acted. They're written to be greenlit. They're written to be
Very good,
you know, to convince people to invest because it's a business property. Mm-hmm. What I don't think people understand when that is what's presented to an actor is that then we have to completely reinterpret it in order to make it work. So, and sometimes that can happen. Sometimes you're able to be successful at that, and sometimes it's not. No matter how commercially successful someone may think a movie will be, or it very well could be, even if it's not actable. But for me, I need two things. I need a great story, and I need something that has the potential to actually be acted.
And say to me, I say, is this a movie or a play that I would like to see? And if it's not, well, I won't bother being in it. Because we do it for you, you know. That's the point. The point acting all by yourself in a room. It's you. So if it's not something that would entertain me, why do I think it would entertain anybody else? So that's how I begin to. Are we finishing? Because before we do, I've got something I want to say.
Go ahead.
Well, you would have heard this said before, but we love this project. Not just because of Bill Condon, but because we're both very, very proud of it. And we're here to encourage people to go and see it. And we didn't have to encourage you because you came and wanted to thank you for that. But my Facebook is full of messages from people saying, I can't see the movie because it's not been released in my city. And it's not been released in many places in the United States because the distributors are doing the time-honored business of opening the film in places like Los Angeles, where there's hopefully a ready audience, and judging on the enthusiasm of the audience, and judging on the numbers of people who come to see the film in the next 2 days, will be the decision as to whether the film will be seen in areas where people at the moment can't see it. So, if you've enjoyed the film, will you tell somebody? And will you tell them to come quick? Because if they do, you can actually be part of making this movie and certainly making it a success. And it deserves to be seen by people who can't get near the cinema at the moment. So I'd like you to just really come on our side and do your bit. Thank you.
I think we can do that, right? Well, Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much, Ian.